Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back to the show. We are excited to join our new friend, Elisabeth Stitt, to the show. She's the founder of her own company, Joyful Parenting Coaching, from beautiful Monterey, California. We're here today with our coach. Welcome to the show. Good morning, good afternoon. How are you?
Good morning here. Good afternoon to you. I'm great. Thank you.
Great. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners today to start?
Sure. I am Elisabeth Stitt, a veteran teacher, mostly of middle school, who 9 years ago switched over to parenting coaching because I saw a big difference in how kids were showing up and how parents were showing up. And parenting was looking and feeling a lot harder. And I just kept thinking, doesn't have to be that hard.
Yes. Well, wonderful to have you here as a parent. I have a 5 and 7-year-old, so I'm a little late in the game here, but I know. Are you a parent as well?
I am. Mine are 24, 26, and 28.
Beautiful. Congratulations. So we have plenty of experience. I get it. So gosh, let me ask it. A lot of your own personal inspiration that inspired you. I guess, as we get older, we learn what we could have, should have done for our own children. And could you share a little bit about that and your background and of course your family and what brought you into this field?
Yeah, absolutely. When we think about what sparks us, very often it's a quality that has been present our entire lives. And that was absolutely true for me. I was the kid who, instead of going to my own Sunday school class, would keep walking down the hall and go spend Sunday school time with the toddlers. And by 4th grade, I was a mother's helper. And by 6th grade, I was babysitting lots. And, I was the go-to babysitter. I was the most popular. The kids were happy, the parents were happy babysitter. And in 9th grade, when we all got an opportunity to practice writing research papers and could choose any topic, I wrote how to be an effective parent. Now, I wish I still had that because you can imagine how sanctimonious it probably was. All of 14 writing how to be an effective parent. But it does mean that I have spent a lifetime interacting with kids and asking the question, what is the most effective way to engage with them? So, yep, 25 years of teaching, over 13,000 students.
Wow.
No, 1,300, sorry, extra zero. 1,300 students, but still over 50,000 hours of direct hands-on support for kids, and now almost 9 years of supporting parents.
Wow. So the name of the book you wrote was Parenting as a Second Language. Is that the title of it?
Yes.
And where can we find that, by the way? Could you share your website and I guess, any way we can contact you?
Absolutely. My website's always a good place. My website's just my name, elisabethstitt.com. The real trick is that it's Elisabeth with an S, not with a Z.
Perfect. ELISABETHSTITT.com.
That's it. And of course, the book is available on Amazon as well.
Wonderful.
And yeah.
Great. We also, I know you offer online parenting webinars. I mean, there's so much to you, but let's start out with, you mentioned even yourself in your notes, I was shocked. You said the parenting is harder now than ever. Can you explain why?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the webinars I give. I call it 4 Challenges Modern Parents Face, and that are making parents feel more anxious, overwhelmed, and guilty about their kids. And of course, what can we do to deal with that? But yeah, briefly, hard to be brief on this topic, but I'll do my best. Fundamentally, we do not have the same structures in place that we used to have that supported us in parenting. So, small example, you used to work from 9 to 5. That meant it was structurally easy for parents to come and to all eat dinner at the same time because people were not scheduling activities between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. at night. so that we didn't have, I just had the mother of a 6-year-old talk to me this morning and say, well, I want to, her friends are signing up for basketball. I want her to be more physical, but it meets at 6 p.m. on Wednesday nights. And that's going to throw dinner. That's going to throw bedtime. It's going to make her grumpy and grouchy. And I don't know if I should say yes. And that is really encapsulates so much of our challenge, that trying to create a cohesive family experience, trying to bond and say, we are a family and the family is what's important, is getting eaten away at from multiple directions. The scheduling of sports and activities is one from the kid direction for sure. And the degree to which when we get a ping on our phone, we are expected, it's not just that we expect to respond to that ping, it's that the person at the other end really expects us to respond to that ping and is going to create agitation and give us flack if we aren't able to respond. So I know that when I ask parents, hey, what would it be like to turn your phone to airplane mode from 6 p.m. until you wake up the next morning? Most of them just laugh at me. They're like, yeah, no way, Elisabeth. That is completely unrealistic. So then we negotiate and say, well, what would it be to do it from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.? And at least when we're trying to do dinner, homework, bath, bedtime, that we are 100% fully present for our kids. And I don't just mean for our little kids, because our big kids need us as well. So that's one of the differences. There's been a shift in the expectation of who you are as a parent and what it means to be a good parent. So I don't know if when you were growing up, if my mother's rule used to be, if you're not bleeding, I don't want to hear about it. So like, go outside and play. If you're not bleeding, don't come back in to bother me. In other words, the expectation of parenting was keep your kids safe and produce a reasonable citizen of the world. It didn't have to be perfect, didn't have to be great. So we weren't thinking about who children needed to be at a young age. I had somebody reach out to me one day about, they were doing a podcast and they wanted to know if I would come speak on their podcast. And the podcast was literally about getting the resume together, the college-ready resume. And we weren't talking high school and we weren't talking middle school. This podcast was focused on elementary school kids. What can we do with our elementary school kids to get them ready for that college application process? That fundamentally makes parenting harder.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because we no longer just have the standard of, are they reasonably happy? Are they reasonably polite? And are they safe? Now we're having to be program directors who are looking at where they are and where they're going to go and micromanage each of those steps and weigh each of those steps in terms of what their future is and what it isn't.
Oh, this is getting hard. I thought the young ages was hard, but oh, you got me thinking now about these teenage years.
Well, it's not just, right? It's going up, it's going away. Each of these steps, we've got all these vector points, and we are driven by fear. Talked to the mom of a first grader and actually I was talking to the kids, and it was May and they were still going to soccer. And I was like, oh, I thought soccer was a fall sport. They're like, well, we play year round. I said, oh, you must really love soccer. And they kind of looked at me like, eh. And so I asked, well, is there a sport that you like better? And one said basketball and one said baseball. And so I was chatting with mom later and I said, hey, mom, I'm just curious. You've got 2 kids in year-round soccer. Each of them says they like a different sport better. Like, why not just do soccer in the fall and then not worry about it? And she was like, Elizabeth, I know it's ridiculous, but in this town, if you have not been playing soccer all along, there is no way you're going to make the high school soccer team.
Mm,
And I just feel like high school sports are so important.
yeah,
And it's true. There's a lot of correlation, positive correlations with playing a high school sport.
yeah.
Less drug activity, later onset before sexual activity, better grades. So it makes sense that a parent is thinking like, yeah, I'd like my kid to play on the team at school and high school. But
Yeah.
does it make sense to have a first grader play year-round soccer when they don't absolutely love
Love
it,
it. Hmm.
with the hope and the expectation that they're going to make
Yeah.
a high school team? That
Hmm.
makes parenting much harder today than it used to be.
Wow. There's a lot to be said. Oh my goodness, a lot. So as a coach now, you're here working with parents and students, right? So you do virtual coaching all over the world, correct?
I do coach all over the world, but I really start through the avenue of the parents.
Got it.
So
Hmm.
I don't want to coach kids on their own. I want to
Got it.
coach their parents, and then we may get to a point with the older kids where it's really important that the kid understand how hard the parent is trying to shift. And at some point, it's very useful to have a conversation where the child is getting a chance to say, hey, this is what you don't understand.
Yeah.
This is what you're not getting, mom. You don't get it, dad. And I can help facilitate that conversation.
Got it. And
And
you
then,
mentioned in your notes about authoritative parenting, right? So being an authority, being a disciplinary figure. Can you explain more about that and those benefits?
okay, sure. So this is research in a construct that I really like all parents to know. So in the 60s, they started doing research asking the question of, is there a parenting style that correlates with kids thriving at a higher level? And the research made a distinction between really four kinds of parents. And if you think of it as a quadrant with an X, Y axis, the lower left-hand quadrant is neglect. It's just neglect. It means that, so the x-axis is the level of expectation. How much am I expecting of my child? The y-axis is how warm and connected am I being in interacting with my child. So
Hmm.
low expectation, low interaction, that's neglect. It's like, I'm just not paying attention to you. I'm just not focusing on you. I'm not considering it as part of my job to really develop you as a human being.
Yeah. Hmm.
High expectations, but low warmth is authoritarian parenting. We might call that the tiger mom parenting. That's the parent who is willing to put aside the cuddles and the love and the warmth and the connection in order to assure that their child performs. Of course, the advantage of authoritarian parenting is very often that you do see kids performing at higher levels,
Hmm.
because that parent has been willing to say, I don't care how you feel, you go practice. This isn't good enough, you do it again. And so that's the advantage of it. The disadvantage of it is that kids with authoritarian parents can feel that their only value lies in their performance. So then if they fail to perform, that's a big, big hit on their self-esteem. Or they feel so disconnected from their own emotions and their own desires that, of the four parenting styles, that is the parenting style which is most likely to lead to suicide. So that's a really big cost to this high performance.
Yeah.
The other side, if we go to low expectations, but high warmth, we call that permissive parenting. And permissive parenting is about I call that the run around and eat your cookies parent. That's the parent who is so focused on let's have this happy, warm, loving relationship that I'm not going to demand too much of you because it might make you unhappy and it might bring stress and conflict between us. That's a situation which can work at home, and it can work with a parent who has boundless amounts of patience. Because you have to really be, if that's the way you're going to run things, you have to be really okay with your kids eating the whole package of Oreos, or jumping on the bed, or jumping on the couch, or running through the house like screaming banshees.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for the kid is twofold. One, most of us don't have that much patience. So we're patient, and then we lose it. And then we're out of control.
Yeah.
And two, even if we have managed to be very patient and present at home, when the child goes out into the world, the rest of the world is not saying yes all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so now there's a disconnect in the child between how I expect the world to be and how I expect people to interact with me and treat me and see me versus how they do.
Wow.
And so that can also hit an emotional self-esteem. Plus, because the parent hasn't kind of pushed through, even when it's hard, to help the child develop a skill,
Mm-hmm.
those children can then show up in a social situation, show up at school, and look around and go like, oh, everybody else has these skills and I don't have them. And so that's another hit to your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we reaching for? We are reaching for that magic balance of high expectations, expecting things of our kids, pushing our kids, wanting them to excel, but doing it with a lot of warmth and connection and explanations. Why am I asking you to do this? So it's not you do this because I told you to do it.
Yeah, because that doesn't get you far.
Because it doesn't get you far. Well, and again, this is one of the other reasons why parenting is harder today. We used to live in a patriarchy, and it worked in the patriarchy. You could say father knows best because everybody was saying it and everybody agreed that the role of father got respect just as a result of being father. But we don't live in a patriarchy anymore. And so now we have to take the time to explain to kids, why am I asking you to do this? Why am I pushing you to do this? What's going to be the benefit when you have mastered it? I know it's hard right now. I know you're struggling, but I also know this is something you can master, and we're going to work on it, and we're going to give you the different kinds of supports that you need to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm holding the goal, I'm holding out the expectation, but I'm doing it with a lot of warmth.
Yeah.
And a lot of faith and reassurance. Like, we don't have to get there today. Let's take the next step. But we're going to get there. We just need to take a baby step today. What could we do today? Just 5 more minutes. So that's authoritative parenting.
Got it. And by the way, I just wanted to mention, I know we only have 8 minutes left already. It goes so quick, but there's so much to your practice, the harmony at home, the parenting classes you offer. So I'll just have you take the reins. I mean, what else did you want to discuss for the last few minutes of our show? Boy, that went quick.
Everything I know, everything goes quickly. Everything I do relates back to what I call the 4 pillars of parenting.
Yes.
And those pillars are clarity. So that's your foundation. That's prioritizing your values. Connection. That's the silver bullet of parenting. When a child is misbehaving, 9 times out of 10, it is because they feel disconnected. They feel not part of the system, not seen, heard, and valued. Communication. That's probably like one of the pillars of life, right? Like, you need to communicate effectively.
True.
And then the last one is consistency. And consistency for kids really has to do with making them feel safe, because they are learning so much at any one given time, right? That it is taking them so much time and effort and energy to make sense of the world, that when we provide them a very consistent world at home, they no longer have to focus their energy at home because they know what to expect. They know what's going to happen. They know when bedtime's going to be, so they
Yeah.
don't have to push against it. They know when they get up in the morning what they are responsible for and what's going to happen if they don't take that responsibility, how their parent's going to respond. So that's why consistency is more of a pillar that we talk about for children than for adults. It's really because they don't have as much context yet. And they're learning so much about the world that we're trying to provide them a very safe, consistent world at home. So whether I'm teaching a webinar or I do a 5-week class, and that's a 5-week class that has, you could do it as an evergreen, invest in the videos and get the recordings and download them and keep them forever. You can do it as a Zoom class with me in person. So it's the same curriculum, but then I just teach it in person so that we can bring in your unique examples and we can have the benefit of hearing other parents and kind of the energy of and the accountability, right? Sometimes it helps to know, like, okay, I'm committed. I'm showing up every Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And then I also do it as private one-on-one coaching. And so the private one-on-one coaching can either be done sort of with the curriculum as a basis, if you're feeling like, boy, I don't know how to parent. I don't know what parenting is. I need a class. But my life is busy and my time, my family's complex, and I don't think just going to class is going to be the best use of my time. So then I go through the curriculum and combine it with one-on-one coaching. Or of course, then there's just one-on-one coaching too, and that's it's the biggest monetary investment, but it's the most efficient in terms of where are you as a parent? What do you need to learn? What do you want to focus on? What do you want to work on? And I do put out a newsletter every week. The topics range from, because I deal with parents of kids of all ages. And also one of the reasons I do that, Jill, is because I like to teach thematically more than just by the age and stage. I want parents to see how the technique that I'm using with my 4-year-old is essentially the same technique I'm going to use with my 14-year-old. And, it's going to shift some, but I want you to start with the technique that you're going to use with your 4-year-old. And then I want to tell you how to use it with your 14-year-old. So that's why I keep coming back to these same themes over and over.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We are just about out of time here. Elisabeth Stitt, my goodness, how quick it goes. That's ELISABETHSTITT.com. We can sign up for your free newsletter there. I saw that as well. There's so much to all that you have to offer. In closing today with our listeners, what did you want to leave off? And I'm just curious, how long does it usually take to get this going, to work with someone to start seeing changes in their parenting and in their children?
Well, if you're working one-on-one, there's sort of an up and a down. Like things are gonna get better right away, and then they're gonna get harder because your kids are gonna go like, whoa, like there's a new sheriff in town. Can I drive the sheriff out of town?
Yes, got it.
Right. And then it's gonna get better again as you really hold the line and reassure your kids through your actions and interactions that, no, I've got a new way of doing things here.
Yeah.
It gets better. Yeah. The last thing I want to say to parents is this, Jill. Parenting is not innate. It's a social skill. We don't have the social structures from which we used to learn it, which is why we even have parenting coaches. But it is a skill. It can be taught and learned and practiced and applied.
Beautiful. That's a good thing, because we all can use some help. Oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about, but we have to go. I also want to ask you about the homeschooling and the parenting and the quarantine and the COVID, which changed a lot of our lives as well, which I think is a good topic. But are we speaking next week?
We are.
All right, perfect. Sounds good then. Elisabeth Stitt, any other form of contact you want to leave before we go?
My website is probably the easiest. My email is also just my name, Elisabeth
Right.
at elisabethstitt.com.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today, for being here, occupying space, and a happy and healthy new year to you and to all those children, adolescents listening. Yeah, you may need some help, and can tell your parents about Elisabeth. Elisabeth, thank you again. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcasts on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.